A big thanks to Paul and PCCW Global, one of our first MEF 3.0 certified providers, for sharing insights on automation and agility for digital transformation. Onward to our next destination, where MEF Vice President of Strategic Programs, Daniel Bar-Lev, explains how MEFs work in defining LSO APIs and smart bilaterals is enabling digital service providers to transact with a wide range of partners to create high-value, complex digital products in real time. Computer, on screen.
Hello, welcome to the latest episode of MEF Perspectives, part of the Infinite Edge series. Today I'm going to be talking about what MEF is doing in the area of federations and supply chains for digital products. Digital products, the combination of compute, connectivity, and storage, are a central element in the connected economy. They are becoming increasingly mission critical for a lot of enterprises, and they're becoming more and more complex. And finally, they're becoming shorter and shorter in duration as complex digital products get created and then removed and replaced with another digital product which the customer needs. And this is having a major impact on the service provider industry and opportunities. And so for these digital products that don't last very long necessarily, have a short duration of their lifetime, but are complex, it's very, very important to automate the whole business life cycle around these digital products, because if it takes a long time to create a digital product, then it becomes irrelevant for the enterprise end customer. And also, if the overhead involved in the business life cycle, the administration, things like quoting prices, ordering, billing and settlement, and so on, if they're onerous for a small duration service or product, it becomes unworthwhile. So in order to scale the digital product economy, so to speak, it's very important to automate and enable the rapid streamlining of the business lifecycle for digital products. So what examples are there of digital products? Well, there are many, many, many examples, and I've just listed three here. The first one is SASE managed services. So MEF right now is defining SASE managed services, which enterprises will be ordering from their service provider, managed SASE services, which are essentially a combination of security functions, connectivity, and policy. And that combination is exactly what we would envisage for a digital product. So the ability to check what is available from the service provider in terms of a SASE managed service, and then perhaps even more importantly, to price it, to quote it, the price for it, and to deliver it, requires automation. So of the business life cycle. So that's one example of a digital product. Another example is that of the telco edge and edge AI services on the telco edge, something that we covered quite extensively in our recent MEF 3.0 POC showcase. And edge AI services, again, require the ability of service providers to pull together in real time complex products that rely not only on what's in their own inventory, but also what is available from their partners in order to complete the digital product. In this case, perhaps an edge AI service. So if we can imagine an enterprise with, for example, a national or global presence, their service provider that's offering the edge AI service for all their locations throughout the country or the globe will need to be able to order things like compute in edges close to all the locations throughout the world, and typically that will be out of their footprint. And these are the sort of things that will not be ordered over the internet. So the business lifecycle has to be secure, and it has to be fast, and it has to be scalable. And the third example of digital product leads on from what we were hearing from the panel earlier with Kevin Vachon and Chris Ballinger from MEF and Moby, and Jason from Capacity, who were explaining how there's an emerging market for connected vehicles or mobility, where the compute is actually going to reside on the mobile edge or the vehicle edge. And again, the service providers that will play in this area will be deploying capabilities both within their own network and their own telco edge, but also outside of it. And that requires a streamlined business approach to the whole business life cycle. So, what are the key elements in this environment of streamlined business life cycles? As we see it emerging in the market today, the three key elements that I want to touch on today, and were touched on earlier in the panel discussion or the executive discussion, are the federations, supply chains, and identity management. So let me talk a little bit more about that. Federations have not been defined yet, and that was touched upon earlier. Everybody has their own take on what a federation is. So in MEF, we've actually tentatively started proposing standardized definitions of what we call federations for digital products. And these federations are essentially groups of actors, commercial business actors, buyers and sellers, companies effectively. Maybe service providers, they may be enterprises, they may be other agencies in the economy, and these federations essentially are defined by the trust that's assigned to them by a governing authority or a reputable industry authority, so that those entities or actors within the federation that are buying and selling from each other will use identity and rely on trust and reputation within that federation in order to do business. So we think of federations in our emerging definition as long-term groups of actors, buyers and sellers that are transacting with one another in a streamlined way for digital products. Now, if we look at supply chains are the analogy or analogous rather of the physical world. We're very, very familiar with supply chains for physical products, complex products that are manufactured with smaller parts, which in turn are manufactured with parts from other partners, which in turn are supplied, raw materials. Supply chains, global supply chains, have been very much a part of our lexicon for many years. Well, now we're going to see complex supply chains also for digital products, because at any given time for a particular customer that needs a particular digital product, not all of the product elements that are required in order to build that digital product will be available from a single actor or entity in a federation, and they typically will need to purchase that in real time from their partners, who in turn may have to order them from their partners. So the life cycle essentially is pre-order, order, post-order, and this let's call it a domino effect, as one entity or one actor needs to complete their offering to their upstream buyer, will go downstream perhaps to buy from their partners. So these supply chains only come into effect with the delivery of a digital product for a specific customer with a specific lifetime. And they are created and torn down according to the needs of that specific digital product. So we see supply chains in MEF as being temporary, but underpinned by federations and the trust and reputation that go with them. But they need to be automated. And the automation of the transactions and the business between each neighboring entity in the supply chain is critically important. So what is MEF doing in this area? MEF has been for a number of years defining LSO APIs. I'll spell that out. LSO is Lifecycle Service Orchestration, and APIs are the software based interfaces between actors, buyers and sellers, for example, or any machine-to-machine interface that's required for software to work and transfer information between the two entities. The LSO APIs have been defined, standardized, open standardized APIs have been defined for two areas, what we call in our reference architecture LSO Sonata and LSO Cantata, have been defined for things like address qualification or address validation, product offering qualification, site serviceability, quote, order, inventory. And we're extending that now to trouble ticketing and product catalog and billing and settlement. So we have been developing in MEF, and we continue to do so under the framework, the umbrella of LSO APIs, very, very important APIs for these areas of the business lifecycle. And by enabling these or providing these APIs to the industry and actors or buyers and sellers in the industry, like service providers, implementing those LSO APIs, they are able to essentially transact in an automated, instantaneous way. And our first release of the LSO APIs was back in 2017. And since then, we've been building up the program, the framework, and our first named release was in December of 2020, Aretha. And we've just published our most recent release, Billy, in May of 2021, and the next one will be Selene. So Selene and Billy and Aretha essentially contain all that is required by buying and selling entities to standardize effectively between them these pre-order, order, and post-order elements of the business life cycle to essentially automate the whole life cycle. We've gone further than LSO Sonata and LSO Cantata, and we have introduced work on what we call smart bilaterals. So we now have a draft standard out. It's the industry's first for DLT based interaction between buyers and sellers, and that's called MEF 114 draft standard release 1. And that shows how buyers and sellers using LSO APIs in combination with smart contracts can actually synchronize all of their business interactions to ensure immediate and automated elements of the business lifecycle beyond the LSO APIs for things like billing, ordering, billing, and settlement. So that's very important work that's been going on there. And beyond that, we are now working in collaboration with Moby on the ability, essentially, to enable automation of buying and selling of digital products, not only within an ecosystem or within a federation, for example, of telecoms, but also between different federations or ecosystems. So we now are working together with Moby in close collaboration to show and enable telecoms from the MEF ecosystem and the telecom industry to buy and sell and create new revenue with partners in a completely different ecosystem in the mobility or MOBI ecosystem for example, connected vehicles. And that relies very much on the standardization work that we're doing. And another group, another project in MEF now, that is defining how do we recognize each other's identities? And this is based in large part on the work of C-BAN and the core services that they defined in C-BAN by using the same identity mechanism then different federations using that identity management mechanism will be able to transact with one another, even though identities have been issued by different federations. And that brings us back to that definition of what the DNA of federation is. It's the identity that's issued by the governance authority behind the federation, for example, MEF, or for example, MOBI, and perhaps in the future C-BAN, which by recognizing each other's identities that have been issued to their federation members to be able to create transactions over the MEF standardized smart bilaterals with LSO APIs. So on that note, I will stop here and thank you for joining us today on MEF Perspectives. For those that are already MEF members, we urge you to join us in our projects related to federations and supply chains and identity management, influence, implement, and innovate. And for those that are not MEF members, well, we urge you either to join our work in MEF or to partner with other ecosystems and to adopt the standardized approach that we are driving in MEF. So thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Bye-bye.